So, Last of Us Season 2 is over, and we're left to answer the question, what the hell happened? And will we be getting a Season 3? We're going to examine both of these questions, and the second one, I'm really going to get into at the end of this video, so stay tuned for that. Welcome back, everyone. Because of Season 2, I have been learning more about Part 2, the game, which, as I've said before, I have not played, but I have done a ton of research on and watched a lot of the gameplay of. So I don't know all the ins and outs, but I have a general idea for the structure and how that story goes. The more I look at The Last of Us Part 2, the game, the more I'm like, why did we do this? Like, what is this story structure that we're doing in Season 2? How did we get here? Especially in regards to the timing of that porch scene. Like, don't get me wrong, I actually enjoyed the porch scene in the show, but when I compared it to the timing for the porch scene in the game, it just does not compare. The emotional punch that we're missing, oh my goodness. When I just watched the beginning of that scene, I started to cry because I already knew where we were going and I knew just emotionally how high those stakes felt. It's like, my goodness. With Season 2, we've had lows and we've had highs. Something crucial though, I think ultimately is missing with this season. There are changes that they made that work well because of the overall themes of the show and of the story. Like Eugene's death, I feel like plays into that. The addition of Gail as a character. The attack on Jackson, which I thought was very well done. And then there are things that they did that are very good adaptations of what happens in the game directly, like Joel's death, the trip to the museum for Ellie's birthday, which I gotta say, I feel like cinematically is also just gorgeous. And then there are changes that they make that ultimately take away from the themes of the show and ultimately undermine the overall story, I would say, of The Last of Us Part 2. And those are numerous. But to give you a few of them off the top of my head, the cutting out of the time that we could have used to expand upon the changes and kind of the decline in the relationship between Joel and Ellie over time. Chronological order, it's not even so much things being chronological, it's more the way that the chronological order was approached in Season 2. The porch scene, as I've said, which I still thought was good, but like I said, compared to the game, Jesse in general, just so many things I feel like that went wrong there. Ellie's motivations, the dumbing down of her character, Isaac's introduction, the lack of Abby's perspective, the list goes on and on, honestly, with a lot of the stuff, but those are the top ones that I think of. The thing is, I feel like Season 2, and maybe this is gonna be a hot take, but I feel like Season 2 should have just been Abby's season. In fact, based on the introduction that we get in Season 2, it feels like the showrunners, the writers, kind of wanted it to go that way initially, but instead they got cold feet, they drop a bombshell without giving us any emotional weight for Abby with it, and they completely rob us of the discovery of why Abby is doing all of this. I mean, discovery, what is that? That could be the motto really for Season 2, I think. Our hands are just being held, it feels like, for Abby's sake, so that we don't just like completely hate her, so that they can give us her motivation. We understand where she's coming from and why she does what she does, but that doesn't mean that we have a ton of empathy for her character. Now, granted, I think that Kaitlyn is so good as Abby that I would say we still get a few of those moments that kind of shine through, like episode 2, obviously, where she confronts Joel, the dream sequence where she's warning herself to not go into the room, where she sees her father dead, and, you know, with the raid on the hospital, all of that stuff that happens. But it feels like we're going through emotional beats for the most part in this story without us really having any time to buy into the emotions of these characters. It's like we're fast forwarding through those just to get into the why everything's happening, as though somehow that will make us feel more for these characters, which ultimately it doesn't. You know, it doesn't. I mean, explanations without emotional attachment, I logically can follow along with. I understand what's happening in the story, but emotionally, it leaves me feeling kind of lost, like I'm not tethered to anyone at any particular time, for the most part. It leaves this season, to me, feeling hollow. Personally, I would have loved for Season 2, based on what I know of the game, to be more of a mystery season where we don't really know everything that's going on, but it's all about these moments of discovery that we have alongside the character. Instead, it ends up being a beat by beat, basic kind of revenge story without enough heart to actually propel the emotional interest in the story. I would say that season 2 is still really pretty. I mean, it's got a good story at its core that I think it wants to tell, but at every turn, it just seems to be afraid of trusting us, the audience, and also, honestly, of trusting its own story, which is kind of crazy to think when you think we have 2 writers from The Last of Us Part 2, the game, who are on our staff here and like leading the ship, I feel, and yet still, even they were questioning, I think, oh, should we be doing it this way? I don't know. It didn't work out too well. It didn't work out too well when we did it in the game. Now, I'd like to clarify as well. I've said in previous videos, I've talked about this idea of I feel that people that, you know, don't really gravitate towards The Last of Us Part 2, the game, they misunderstood what it was trying to do. And I just want to clarify, I'm not saying, because I feel like some people are misunderstanding what I mean. I'm not saying that the people that, you know, kind of misunderstood or didn't really connect with the story are dumb or anything like that. I'm not saying that they missed the point. I more just think it has to do with the fact that with The Last of Us Part 1, or really just The Last of Us, the game, that they were so attached. You get so attached to these characters emotionally that I think what happened with The Last of Us Part 2 is a lot of people were more focused on the absence of things that they wanted in that game. People were upset that Joel was gone, and they wanted to connect with that character still. They felt close to that character, so it felt like they were robbed of that experience. They didn't like the direction that the game went in, and because of that, they weren't able to focus on what they were being given because they were so focused on what was missing from that game for them, from Part 2. Now, granted, I would say this is also a testament, really, to The Last of Us Part 1, the game, because in that game, it means that you get so emotionally attached to Joel for a lot of people that they felt that The Last of Us Part 2 was doing a disservice to the character and therefore was like ruining their entire experience. And I also feel like there were a lot of people that actively talk about how much they don't like the game that didn't play the game because of this, but still have that critique, which is still also like valid, by the way. I understand being so emotionally attached to something that it just makes you feel like you can't connect with it at all, you know, because you've lost that attachment. I get that. I do that too as a fan of things, but I also hope that when I'm doing that, other people come in and just remind me like, hey, but like, look at what you do have here, and try to open up my mind to things. And that's all I'm trying to say, and trying to open up people's mind too. So it's not a judgment. It's just more of like an observation. And akin to that, I feel that there are a lot of people with season 2 of The Last of Us who are also conflating the issues with the show as like an acting problem. They're like merging those two things, being like the problems are with the show are entirely acting based. And I have to say, to me, it's not really an acting issue based on what I'm seeing on the screen. I think this is more of a writing issue, and it's not even as easy as saying it's a writing issue with like the words on the page. The words on the page, for the most part, I think are actually pretty good. I do have a few criticisms of dialogue if I were to like really get into it, like really nitty gritty. I'm not gonna do that in this video, but overall, I think the writing, it's kind of a bigger picture issue. It's more of a story layout, pacing issue. And I think it has to do with, like I said, just people getting cold feet in regards to the mixed reviews that The Last of Us Part 2, the game, got, and thinking that they need to therefore reconfigure this story so that people understand it better or something like that. Not realizing that, you know, I think a lot of the reasons why people have issues with the game is just because they have emotional attachment to the characters that are absent. And it's really unfortunate because based on what I know of The Last of Us Part 2, the game, the story that we get there, it actually sounds like a very fascinating story that's exploring a lot of themes on a level that is very gray, which I tend to love in stories. So I think when I play it, I'm really going to enjoy it, which I am going to play both of these, by the way. A lot of people have been saying in the comments, Amanda, you have to play the games. I will, don't worry. And I'm going to do it here live on YouTube and on Twitch. You can click that live tab or find me at twitch.tv/vampex13. Yeah, shameless plug for you. So when it comes to the acting, let's talk a little bit more about that, because I do feel at times bad for these actors, because I just feel that they're trying to give us everything they have, but their hands are like tied behind their back. It's like they were asked to defuse a bomb, but their hands are tied behind their back and they're just doing the best that they can. I feel that Bella Ramsey's loss as Ellie really does shine through, even when the script seems to forget that it's happening for Ellie. Bella does find those moments where they can, as Ellie, connect with us as the audience and really show that grief. There are just a few like small moments that we get where I feel that connection, like when Ellie is talking to Dina after having to take out Nora, where Ellie is smelling the shirts that are in Joel's closet. There are a few moments there that Bella's given where it just shines through, but they're few and far between, unfortunately. Like I said, it's because writing-wise, I feel like this show forgets that the grief is happening. Kaitlyn, as well as Abby, is really stellar. I mean, Abby isn't given much to do, really, in this season. She only gets a few moments, and we don't really get a lot of reasons to empathize with her. And yet I felt even in episode 2, when she's hurting Joel, as much as I hate her for hurting Joel, just in her eyes, in Kaitlyn's eyes as Abby, there's so much pain, and the conflict between her and her friends, I think, is very well written, in the sense that you just see how lost this character is and how much pain she's in. And I did empathize with her, even as she was doing something terrible, which really is a testament to Kaitlyn's ability as an actress. And then there's young Mazino, who I know I said that like everything went wrong with Jesse here, but it's really not Young's fault. I feel like he is actually so great in this show. I feel that he is actually the perfect cast as Jesse, and unfortunately, we just squandered it. We don't get enough little moments between Jesse and Ellie to allow us to understand why Jesse would tolerate the abysmal behavior that I feel like Ellie throws his way. She has so much attitude with him, and yet we don't get to see these little moments of why they're such close friends. Early on in the season, I feel like they tried to build it, but it was just so, like, basic. They don't give actors these moments, these little windows into the souls of the characters that I just wish we had more of. And Isabela Merced as Dina, I feel like, I just think she's a great actress. Even in Madame Web, I liked Isabela, and I think that she's great, yet I feel like there's not enough here to really make me care about Dina in general. Dina only gets a few moments where we're really going to see behind her curtain, and other than that, she feels kind of flat as a character. But Isabela's trying, and I can see that. There are moments as well when that shines through. I think her relationship with Ellie, I think some of the stuff where she's talking about her past and what happened to her family, and how she's committed to this revenge mission with Ellie. So there are a few moments that were given, but it's just not enough. So I have to say, a lot of people are making these like really big statements of like, this show is awful. Season 2 sucks. And I have to say, compared to season 1, yeah, I do feel that season 2 is poor. But I think it's also important that when I'm talking about television in general, I compare it to television in general. And I think season 2, compared in general just to television at large, it's still pretty good. It's not the best television I've seen all year, but it's still better than some other stuff that I've seen. It's still, like, just good enough, basically, overall. Now, the season 2 finale was actually down 55% in comparison to the season 1 finale, and that makes me think that there are a lot of people that agree with me in terms of just how mixed, how up and down this season has been. However, we need to talk about some other things when we talk about that number. I think a lot of people are going to highlight this number without any other context, and just to add in a little bit more context, because if you're wondering if HBO is freaking out about this, if they're like, oh my gosh, oh no, we've ordered 2 more seasons of this show, what a mistake, cancel it all right now, burn the scripts, burn the studio, burn HBO Max down. No, they're not worried, because here's the situation. This season finale happened on Memorial Day weekend. And so what HBO is saying is they're not really worried about the viewership being down because it's Memorial Day weekend, so they expected it to be down just because people are out doing other things. They're not at home watching The Last of Us Season 2, which also, when you have a long weekend, let's be honest, it's kind of a bit of a downer of a show to gather together and watch when you might be out, wanting to enjoy the long weekend. Also, Season 1 came out in March, which is very different than Season 2, which came out in May. There's just a lot of different stuff happening. May tends to be a time where people actually want to get outside and do stuff. The weather's starting to get better. And this was also a big weekend for the movies. A lot of people were going to see movies and stuff like that. So people are going out, not staying in. They did have a decline for the Season 2 finale in comparison to episode 1. Season 2, the finale had 3.7 million viewers, which compared to the episode 1 premiere for season 2 at 5.3 is a pretty big decline. But the season finale, just to put it into context, still beat the series finale for Succession, and it beat that by about 800,000 viewers, which is quite a bit. And that's also crazy to consider when you consider how big Succession is as a show. So I don't think HBO in particular is concerned, because obviously Succession is still considered to be a great show and a lot of people love it, and a lot of people aren't worried about that. I mean, granted, it's done now, but you get what I'm trying to say here, I think. I think that you could argue as well that this is also a reflection of those mixed reviews for season 2, and I would agree that that is going to have some effect on those numbers and might be part of the reason why the numbers declined. But I'm just saying there are other factors at play here that we also have to consider and that HBO is definitely considering. I don't think that they're worried about it. I think that what they expect, in fact, what they've said that they expect, is that these numbers will go up over time, which is also something they saw with season 1 of The Last of Us, that those numbers grew over time after the show was done. And apparently with season 2, this is, according to them, also still happening. So we'll see how it goes. They always, I think, also predicted possibly that with where we were heading based on the reception of the game, I'm sure that we were going to see a bit of a decline. But I'm hoping with season 3, they'll bring it back around. I mean, as we saw at the end of season 2, they are alluding to the fact that season 3 is all going to be about Abby's perspective. Now, granted, I think that should have actually been season 2. I think they kind of messed up the order of business there, because I just feel like they really did Ellie dirty in this season. I wish that she had gotten just a better run in season 2. And I think if we did Abby and then we went to Ellie, it would have added a lot more impact for what's going on with Ellie. However, we didn't do that, so now we must lay in the bed that has been made for us. And all we can hope is that season 3 will be better than season 2 and will bring us back up. I know I won't be clicking off. I'll be still tuning in for season 3, so I'll be back to talk about it. But overall, I do have to say that this season was just not as strong as season 1. Not even close for me. And while it gets a passing grade, I'm still going to give it a 3 out of 5 overall as a rating. I just feel for the structure of the story, I got to take those points, even though when we did have high moments in the show, they were pretty high highs, especially in comparison to some other television that I've watched that's just kind of like mid. This show, at least when it is good, it's really good. You know what I mean? Let me know your thoughts on The Last of Us Season 2 down in the comments below. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Why or why not? How do you feel about The Last of Us Part 2, the game, in comparison to the show? I am going to be going through and playing them, so stay tuned for that. And if you want more content from me, if you like when I talk about shows, if you like when I talk about movies and all that good stuff, we do more of that over on my Patreon as well. Patreon.com/Vampex13. The link is in the video description and in the pinned comment. Feel free to check it out. I want to do some more reactions over there too, so if you have ideas for that, let me know in the comments. Maybe we'll do some reactions over there for the Stay Nerdy tier. I'll see you next time, and until then, friends, as always, stay nerdy. Bye! Also, I just watched the Lilo and Stitch remake this past weekend, and I got some thoughts on that for sure, so make sure you check that out over here.